I would say our journey actually started when I was pregnant with Hope, my daughter, in 2015, and we were encouraged to terminate the pregnancy because we knew that she had Down syndrome. And I think that even though that's devastating and cruel and not something that we agree with, it probably lit a fire that was required for everything that we were going to face as she got older. So, maybe a little silver lining there. It taught me that the world wasn't going to be as cushy and comfortable as I thought. I thought that we were much further along in intellectual disability than we actually are culturally. I will never feel embarrassed of her going around with a one-to-one aide. I'll never be afraid to talk about, oh no, we have an IEP and it's 33 pages long. That's just how it goes. I know it's ridiculous. Or like my son has a 504. Of course he does. Thank God. Thank you, Judy Human. Like he has a 504 and he gets to go to the same school, even though they have to sometimes tape his papers to the desk, or because he has to go to the nurse's office to have his brace taken off for gym class. Nobody thinks of this as an inconvenience. They think of it as a support for him. And I think that's exquisite. And I will, shout that from the rooftops until he tells me not to. She was taking her shoes off, she was withholding, she stopped eating, and all through all of this, I just kept saying, oh my gosh, this is my fault. I did this. It was all these months at home. These other kids weren't home. We were home. I did this, I did this, I did this. And what I was missing was the fact that there were problems that I could have tackled. So hindsight, 2020. And the week after Thanksgiving, her teacher said, if Hope doesn't stop taking her shoes off, I'm going to duct tape them to her feet.
Oh my
And
God.
I laughed because I did not know that that was not a joke. I didn't know that this was a thing. I had no idea there was anything. I never had heard of restraint and seclusion. I
Yeah.
just knew nothing about bullying in general outside of like the football kid teasing the kid who plays chess. Like that's what I thought bullying was. I had
Yeah.
no idea that my 4-year-old was going to face bullying. So her shoes were bound to her legs with
Oh my
packing tape,
God.
both feet. And so I said, did she laugh? For whatever reason, like you can psychoanalyze me. I tried to diffuse the situation. For some reason,
Yeah.
I tried to protect the teacher because I was so embarrassed for her, or whatever it is. I don't know. I haven't been to therapy for this yet. When I do, I'll let you know what I come up with. But she said that Hope didn't laugh. She was, very put off by it and very uncomfortable. And then takes her hand, the teacher, and says she couldn't walk. And I scooped my baby girl and I left and I was just crying. I took a picture for my husband. We got home. I said to him, because he was working from home at the time, I said, look at her feet. And he was like, what? And we didn't talk. There were no words. There was nothing you could say. There was nothing we could do. We were both so scared of what had just happened. We're halfway through the school year, and she spent the whole first half of the school year under trauma. This teacher was yelling. She was unpleasant to the children. It was a very uncomfortable environment. We pieced that together, not because the school is ever forthcoming about it, but because we're like, oh, wait, that's why she was withholding. That's why she had an
Mhm.
anxiety attack. She was 4 years old. She came home one day from school and in the parking lot, just full panic attack. A
Oh my
4 year
God.
old. That's crazy. I look up, we have a policy of it in our district, which follows New Jersey state policy, which actually has different standards for children receiving special education services. We're not talking about behaviors. We're not talking about anything other than you get special education. That makes no sense. Why would a child who needs academic support have different safety standards at school? That's that those two don't go together at all. So the National Down Syndrome Society put out in December of 2021, I think, inclusion guidelines. So evidence-based research that children with Down syndrome who are included from an early age have better life outcomes. How can you possibly not want that for your kid? Like, oh, better life outcomes if they're included? Definitely. No, 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 that's not for us. We don't want good life outcomes. Like, we'll skip that part. Like, no. So, I shared that and I see her. I see her when we want both worlds. And this is a thing that I've had to learn mostly through online, through accounts of self advocates, and then also seeing how my children react to certain things. Sometimes I don't love the word inclusion, despite my shirt that says inclusion is always a good idea. Sometimes I don't like the word because it sounds like it's optional, that inclusion comes from, and it does, but that it comes from a place of segregation and that we are choosing something as opposed to it should just be the baseline. Why did we segregate to begin with? The difference between separation and segregation. Separation can be a blessing, it can be incredible, it can be this moment of peace and quiet and calm and understanding. And segregation, based on a diagnosis or a difference of any kind, is really painful. And unfortunately, what we faced was segregation.
But the thing is that you don't want to be with disabled people too much because it sounds shitty when you say it out loud, but I think is when you're surrounded by disabled people, you're kind of grounded a lot. And like I don't know like what intelligence your daughter is and such, and she's young, so it's hard to say. But like let's say you're like the top half of the class of disabled people, you always be grounded by the lower half, and
Mm-hmm.
like it grounds you, so you can't really grow as much you can if unless you were with able-bodied people because they can keep growing. Like,
At first, it was hard to see that there was such a difference because having not been exposed to Down syndrome or disability at all, but like Down syndrome particularly, I guess I just sort of thought they were all going to develop the same. I thought all kids develop the same. Forget Down syndrome, like just typical kids. Like you get your
yeah.
checklist, like between this month and this month, they do X, and between this month and this month, they do this. For Down syndrome, it's a little different. So instead of it being within certain ranges, age ranges, instead it's sort of like almost like a flow, like a across time that it's always forward moving. They are
Hmm.
going to crawl before they walk. They are going to, learn to talk at a certain point. In a show, in a movie, they're an actor, they're a model, they're an artist. Like they have this like fantastic talent that showcases to the world, and then people who aren't exposed have that expectation. Oh, you have Down syndrome. Are you an artist? Like, oh, you're a Down syndrome. Are you a model? Like, no, no, actually, she has Down syndrome and she really, really, really likes Cocomelon. YouTube is like fantastic and she has a stuffed dog. Like, no, we're not, we're just regular people. And so I'm more hesitant as the years go on to say, ooh, look how good we're doing because like, we really haven't done anything yet. Like we've done some medical stuff, we've done some therapies, we've learned some things, she's happy, blah, blah, blah. But like, she's a little kid. And then I see these moms who like get on and they're like, oh my gosh, my 6 month old is like as perfect as your 6 month old. Like, yeah, no, we know. Like, shut up, like, or when they're just look, like I'm playing with my child, like, let me just make sure my hair, oh, don't I look cute in the video? I mean, I'm playing with my child. Like, God damn, like that is so like fake, like yes, I believe that you love your child, but checking yourself in the camera while you're playing with your child after setting up your camera to make sure that you're like, what?
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Two My Fun Joe Suits. I am Joe Suits and I'll be giving my to Elena. Elena is a super mom. Not only does she have two kids with much different challenges, we got Henry with a congenital upper limb difference. We then got Hope who had Down syndrome. While that isn't challenging enough, she went and studied to receive an advanced graduate certificate. Let's start with your journey that seemed to start around the time your daughter's shoes were strapped by her preschool teacher in 2020. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I would say, so thank you first off, Joe, for having me. And thank you to everyone who's interested in our story and for listening. I know you're here for Joe, so I thank you for tolerating me. So yeah, I mean, our journey, I would say our journey actually started when I was pregnant with Hope, my daughter in 2015, and we were encouraged to terminate the pregnancy because we knew that she had Down syndrome. And I think that even though that's devastating and cruel and not something that we agree with, it probably lit a fire that was required for everything that we were going to face as she got older. So, maybe a little silver lining there. It taught me that the world wasn't going to be as cushy and comfortable as I thought. I thought that we were much further along in intellectual disability than we actually are culturally. I learned the hard way that, a lot of the disabilities that we see from a non-disabled perspective are those who are in some way pretty, easy to access, very similar. What some people would say high functioning, I prefer low support need. And that's not the reality. So I realized, not all kids with Down syndrome can talk, and some have dual diagnoses, and it's not all rainbows and butterflies. So we've really learned. I had very little exposure to disability as a kid growing up. So for me, everything I knew about parenting and everything I knew about parenting Hope was going to be about fighting for her. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful and lovely. So yeah, so she had open heart surgery when she was 10 weeks old. And so we started a very medically focused life. There's so much research in Down syndrome, and we're grateful for it. And we stand on the shoulders of those before us, of all of the research that has gone into it. So the medical checklist, doctors who are willing to treat these kids. And so, yeah, so fast forward to 2020, the kids came home from school in March of 2020. Like everyone else, we got shut down. She was considered high risk, so we didn't go out in the community almost at all. I put the kids in the stroller every day and we went for walks. We have a fenced in backyard. So we had a lot
You
of,
have a pool too.
and we have a pool. I was going to say that. Sounds so bougie.
Nah,
We
he
have
got
a
a pool. You gotta brag about
pool.
that.
The pool was a saving grace that summer for sure. In general, we love it. It's helped the kids get strong.
You love it too, don't lie.
I love it. I was in it yesterday. Come on, it's like 90 degrees here
I
and
know it's
humid and
It's a very
disgusting.
horrible day, like the
It's
past
a
2 days.
horrible day.
So bad.
Horrible, horrible. So yeah, I was in it. Yeah, okay, fine. All right. Yeah, I was in it yesterday. I'm proud. Um, so I, so yeah, so our school district was really wonderful. So what they did was when we reopened in September, they did every other day, different, half the school would go in one day, half the school would go another. But if you received special education services, you got to go in 5 days a week. The day was a little
Ah,
shorter, but you got 5 days. And I thought that that was very enlightened because these kids need to keep their routines. They need their services. Like
mhm.
all of these things that fell by the wayside, our district was willing to open it up for them. Now, she was in preschool at the time. She was 4 and little girl. And I mean, if you know anything about these guys, they are pictures that you saw of Hope. Like 4 is very young. It's young in general, but when you have Down syndrome, 4 is a lot younger with the developmental delays. So she's just a little nugget, and and she yeah, the older kids, I mean, if you were in special education in like middle school, high school, there's so much stigma that these kids, if you showed up to school on a day and you had an invisible disability or a learning difference that wasn't necessarily, noticeable, or your peers didn't know that you were getting services, for whatever reason you were embarrassed by it because disability is very stigmatized in this town, that they then didn't want to go 5 days a week because all of a sudden their secret was out. So we also very much benefited from the fact that she was in preschool, she was 4. We've always been very proud and very thankful, openly thankful, that we have the support that we do. I will never feel embarrassed of her going around with a one-to-one aide. I'll never be afraid to talk about, oh no, we have an IEP and it's 33 pages long. That's just how it goes. I know it's ridiculous. Or like my son has a 504. Of course he does. Thank God. Thank you, Judy Human. Like he has a 504 and he gets to go to the same school, even though they have to sometimes tape his papers to the desk, or because he has to go to the nurse's office to have his brace taken off for gym class. Nobody thinks of this as an inconvenience. They think of it as a support for him. And I think that's exquisite. And I will, shout that from the rooftops until he tells me not to. So so we go back to school in September of 2020, and I mean there was a lot of baggage at the time, right? Like a lot of baggage. Everyone's nervous. Still, nobody knows what COVID is. People are dying.
Yeah. I don't think we
Um,
know what COVID is now. That's weird.
so bad. And uh, she struggled going back, and of course, like there's this thing called mom guilt. And I
Mm,
am guilty of having mom guilt. See, that's how much guilt there is. You can be like guilty for feeling guilty. And I I thought that she was struggling because she was home for so long, because she was considered high risk because of her heart and
mm,
Down syndrome. It wasn't added to the list of high risk diagnoses until the following, I think, January of 2021. But all the parents knew, if one child, a typical kid has RSV and my kid with Down syndrome gets RSV, we end up in the ER. So we
yeah.
knew, it just in your gut, we just knew that our kids were at a higher risk. And she actually did amazing. Knock on wood, she did amazing through everything. But so I figured it was just because we kept her home. So many kids in the neighborhood were socializing that summer, and we didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so when she went back, she started struggling. She was taking her shoes off. She was withholding. She stopped eating. And all through all of this, I just kept saying, "Oh my gosh, this is my fault. I did this. It was all these months at home. These other kids weren't home. We were home. I did this. I did this. I did this." And what I was missing was the fact that there were problems that I could have tackled. So hindsight, 2020. And the week after Thanksgiving, her teacher said, "If Hope doesn't stop taking her shoes off, I'm going to duct tape them to her feet."
Oh my
And
God.
I laughed because I did not know that that was not a joke. I didn't know that this was a thing. I had no idea there was anything. I never had heard of restraint and seclusion. I
Yeah.
just knew nothing about bullying in general outside of like the football kid teasing the kid who plays chess. Like that's what I thought bullying was. I had
Yeah.
no idea that my 4-year old was going to face bullying. So she said that, and that would have been such an incredible opportunity to, you know, say something or call attention to
Hmm.
it or speak about it seriously. But I just did not. I don't mean to excuse what I did, but I had no idea that this was even possible. So on Monday, December 7th, she brings her out to me at the end of the day. I was picking her up early just because she wasn't eating. So I didn't feel comfortable having her stay the whole day. And so I would pick her up early every day. So I always had these one on one conversations with this teacher, and she was struggling. I don't know if it was her mental health. I don't know if it was, the COVID baggage that everyone was experiencing, if it was anxiety, what it was. But I was regularly talking to her, bringing her down from her concerns over the students, saying, "Oh,
Hmm.
this kid wouldn't stop screaming, this kid this kid that." And I would always remind her, like, these are people who are so new to the world. Like, these are 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5.
Yeah.
These are
Yeah.
babies who know nothing of social norms. They don't know how to be in school, and it was a self-contained classroom. So
Hmm.
the needs of this teacher was retirement age. Not everyone is the same, obviously, but I have to think there's a difference between how she was trained in special education, what special education meant in the 70s, 80s,
Hmm.
versus who gets included now. The population has changed a lot. A lot of the kids who are included now before were either institutionalized in, separate schools, not permitted in. And now, my daughter with Down syndrome, oh my gosh, she's in the local school. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be. That was sarcasm. So, yeah, so she brought her out to me, and it was her shoes were bound to her legs with
Oh my
packing tape,
God.
both feet. And so I said, "Did she laugh?" For whatever reason, like you can psychoanalyze me. I tried to diffuse the situation. For some reason,
Yeah.
I tried to protect the teacher because I was so embarrassed for her, or whatever it is. I don't know. I haven't been to therapy for this yet. When I do, I'll let you know what I come up with. But she said that Hope didn't laugh. She was, very put off by it and very uncomfortable. And then takes her hand, the teacher, and says she couldn't walk. And I scooped my baby girl and I left and I was just crying. I took a picture for my husband. We got home. I said to him, because he was working from home at the time, I said, "Look at her feet." And he was like, "What?" And we didn't talk. There were no words. There was nothing you could say. There was nothing we could do. We were both so scared of what had just happened. She thrashes a lot. And so we couldn't
Hmm.
cut the tape. So he had to unwind the tape. She
Oh
has
my God.
sensory issues. So she had to listen. She didn't just have to experience it the first time at school. She then had to re-experience the trauma at home when her dad is unwinding the tape. I went to meet Henry. He's little. He's 2 years old. And so I just went in to play with him and just hugged him. And we just didn't talk about it for the rest of the day. Just no one talked. It was the craziest moment, there was nothing to say. We were so scared. And so when we reported it to the school, they followed their guidelines. They put her on an administrative leave. Within a week and a half, they reported institutional abuse to the state. We were told the state that we didn't meet the threshold, the minimum threshold for an investigation.
What the hell?
The teacher, the teacher was reinstated to the classroom in January, and we moved our daughter for her safety. So we ended up put her in a more
God.
strict classroom that didn't meet her IEP needs. And now we're realizing that we're halfway through the school year, and she spent the whole first half of the school year under trauma. This teacher was yelling. She was unpleasant to the children. It was a very uncomfortable environment. We pieced that together, not because the school is ever forthcoming about it, but because we're like, oh, wait, that's why she was withholding. That's why she had an
Mhm.
anxiety attack. She was 4 years old. She came home one day from school and in the parking lot, just full panic attack. A
Oh my
4 year
God.
old. That's crazy. So and then I started, trying to uncover things. So like I had my PTSD from it, my nightmares, whatever else. And then also was trying to figure things out. What was this? And that's where I had friends who worked in special education who taught me phrases like restraint and seclusion. I look up, we have a policy of it in our district, which follows New Jersey state policy, which actually has different standards for children receiving special education services. We're not talking about behaviors. We're not talking about anything other than you get special education. That makes no sense. Why would a child who needs academic support have different safety standards at school? Those two don't go together at all. There's actually a bill right now in the Senate and the House called Keeping All Students Safe Act, CASA, they call it. It's about getting rid of restraint exclusion in schools. Like you just don't get to do it. Like you don't get to do it. So hopes
Wait,
restraint
wait, so
like
you're saying that there won't be any more safety for disability kids? Did I get that right?
no, it will keep them safe. So they'll remove that double standard for them.
Okay.
Still be, I mean, basically, there was nothing in our school policy. Now, we didn't go to the police with this for other reasons, but there's no school policy that would have this teacher fired or have some sort of communication to other parents that it was done because our daughter received special education. So, as far as restraint and seclusion, there are limits, for example, of like having to report it. So, if you had to restrain or seclude a child, you have to report it by the end of the day. You have
Yeah.
to plan so that maybe you can minimize it in the future. So, like these things exist in policy, but we're talking about now making a federal law that says you actually don't get to do it. You broke the law. Oops, you don't get to work with children anymore. Like that just makes a lot of sense to me. So, yes, I connected with the National Down Syndrome Society, the New Jersey Coalition for Inclusive Education, different parents, learned a lot. We ended up giving her an extra year of preschool to try to make up for all of the shifts that had happened. We weren't getting answers on the restraint and seclusion, so I filed a complaint with the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights, which is still under investigation. So we're going on like 2.5 years now that it's been under investigation. I know that there's a backlog, and we're very, very thankful that they didn't just close the case because that would be easier, that they continue to investigate. But, our district tries to make a character, draw my character, I don't know what words I'm looking for, of me. That I was like some renegade who wanted the teacher to get fired because it would make me feel better.
Um,
Um,
I mean,
they
that's,
didn't even tell other parents in the classroom that
I
there
mean,
was
this,
a
I mean,
teacher.
whatever you're feeling, like, I can feel like the rage coming through the screen, and like, whatever you're feeling is, I mean, totally valid. Like, it's so like, it sounds so much like the 1950s that it's hard to believe that happened in 2020
Yeah.
out of all things. And like, you want me to like call some friend and like me break her car windows or something?
Actually, I have a friend who said we should go forking. Have you ever heard of forking someone's lawn?
No.
Okay, I hadn't either. So what you do is like middle of the night, right? You get like a whole box of plastic forks and you stab them into the person's lawn and then pop the handles off so that they have to go out and pick individually all
Oh
of the
my
little
god.
work. Yeah, so that was something that was offered to me. I declined, but a lot of people have some really lovely ways of retaliating.
Well, you know what to do, audience. I'll give you the address at the end of the video and we'll do something. My god,
Sounds good. No, we're not really
yeah.
going to do it.
No, I mean, but yeah, it's really bad, but also, it just also sucks that I'm sure you're not the first one, but it happens to a lot of parents that you have to put so much effort into your child, like the institution's like not helping you in any capacity at all. They're just like
Mhm.
hoping like you go away and like they continue with their lives basically,
Yeah, I
and it's
describe it
so
as our
bad.
district tried to play chicken with us, and they didn't know, but we don't lose chicken. When it comes to my kids, you can do anything to me. Like, don't, but you can. Like, I can take it. I can handle it. I
Yeah.
can rationalize it. I can heal from it. Do not mess with my kids. Thank you. And they accidentally, they chose the wrong family. Right now, we actually have a very good thing going after a year of due process. So we still have all the issues related to what happened with the packing tape, with some things that they did after that. But as far as then we have this other thing about getting her included. So the National Down Syndrome Society put out in December of 2021, I think, inclusion guidelines. So, evidence based research that children with Down syndrome who are included from an early age have better life outcomes. How can you possibly not want that for your kid? Like, oh, better life outcomes if they're included? Definitely. No, 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 that's not for us. We don't want good life outcomes. Like, we'll skip that part. Like, no. So, I shared that and I see her. I see her when we want both worlds. And this is a thing that I've had to learn mostly through online, through accounts of self advocates, and then also seeing how my children react to certain things. And she needs both. She loves sitting on a swing with a nonverbal person, whether it's a kid or a young adult, who's making sounds. And she's so into that. Like the adaptive swings at our
Okay.
playground, like she sits there and she's just like, yes, like keep going with your sounds. Like she loves that. It makes her so happy. And I find sometimes she's very peaceful when she doesn't have so much verbal language coming at her. And then on the other hand,
Okay.
I see how she plays so nicely with typical kids. They know how to include her. They know how to facilitate language. They know how to facilitate play. And she receives that so well that, if she was indifferent to it, we might not have fought so hard, but she would tell us in so many different ways that she wanted to be in these classrooms with these kids. And it's up to us to figure out how to make that happen for her. So far, knock on wood, we're on our third day of, basically fourth day of school.
Okay.
And so far, so good. The principal has been lovely. So this is a new school for her. The principal has been lovely. Her teachers are incredible. Her special education teacher, it's the first time their elementary school is doing co-taught classrooms. Also, we're a couple decades behind in that regard. But they're doing it. And they're doing it with a lot of love and passion and research. And so again, 4 days, but cautiously optimistic that this might work.
Yeah, I know you have a video on your Instagram showing your hope. I believe it's her first day, and you see all the teachers like celebrating for her to come in. It's so heartwarming to watch.
Oh, you know what? I think if I remember correctly, I think that was her last day of school
Oh,
last year. Yeah. So what we did was through due process, there's something called a unilateral placement. So if you can't agree with your school district about the academic placement, then the parents can on their own move the child and then seek reimbursement if you can prove that your district wasn't providing a free and appropriate public education or a FAPE. We were able to prove that, which is fantastic. But for a year, for kindergarten, she was a couple towns away. So the drive was worth it. And it was a public school, and they had already started inclusion. The fact that sometimes I don't love the word inclusion, despite my shirt that says inclusion is always a good idea. Sometimes I don't like the word because it sounds like it's optional. That inclusion comes from, and it does, but that it comes from a place of segregation and that we are choosing something as opposed to it should just be the baseline. Why did we segregate to begin with? The difference between separation and segregation. Separation can be a blessing, it can be incredible, it can be this moment of peace and quiet and calm and understanding. And segregation, based on a diagnosis or a difference of any kind, is really painful. And unfortunately, what we faced was segregation. And, teaching people that difference between like separation and
Mm-hmm.
segregation, like, why would I be okay with her learning in a separate space? Well, because she needed it, not because she has Down syndrome, not because she, whatever else, but because it was a benefit to her. These are very tricky nuances to teach people.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally no, well, just to be clear, you're much more knowledgeable in like the government aspect that you're like kind of flying over my head right now. Like,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
no,
sorry.
I mean, it's great that you're really involved in, and like, there has to be more people like you. So I'm just want to put that out there, but I do definitely know like the whole inclusion, like I was that student where like I was in like the special classrooms and such, and then I would slowly mingle with regular kids and see how I would do and such, and like
Hmm.
it is
You
a
remember
very
all that?
yeah, I mean yeah, first and second grade, just like going in and see like if I will mingle well with them, and yeah, it's important to be around them because they offer a skill that you really can't teach with a teacher, like social skills and like talking to people and all that. You can't teach that in a YouTube video or
No.
like a teacher. That has to be like you also kind of have to like fail a lot too. If that makes sense, and then like learn as you go. Like that's what growing up is, and I
Yeah.
totally get that. It do get a little tricky with disabled people because you don't like you were saying like she likes to be with like nonverbal people, but
Hmm.
the thing is that you don't want to be with disabled people too much because it sounds shitty when you say it out loud. But I think is when you're surrounded by disabled people, you're kind of grounded a lot. And like I don't know like what intelligence your daughter is and such, and she's young, so it's hard to say. But like let's say you're like the top half of the class of disabled people, you always be grounded by the lower half, and
Hmm.
like it grounds you, so you can't really grow as much you can if unless you were with able-bodied people because they can keep growing. Like and you kind of separate. Like you have like the dumb people, and I have like the middle people, and I have like the smarter people. So like it was really smart, but I was always surrounded by disabled people, and I just group with them, so I was always grounded. So like I was always taught like how to draw and like stuff that's not really useful in society.
Oh,
And
yeah. Okay.
so like
Hmm.
I do understand how great it is to be inclusive, but at the same time, you also don't want to be part of the disabled community. And the only appropriate way I can describe it is like the lower bottom of the disabled people because then you won't be able to grow. So
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Like, so when you say your daughter, like during COVID, and you said that your daughter didn't go to school and stuff, so do you think the COVID has affected your daughter's growth, or you
Um,
think was it yeah? Do you think it affected her growth at all?
I think I think she would have bounced back very easily. So little, she was 4.
Mm-hmm.
So the instruction that she got at home, once we realized that we couldn't do the virtual Google Meets that the school was having us do, once I felt
Mm-hmm.
empowered to close that screen and just play with my kids, I think they did okay because it was just a couple months. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
was good for our relationship. And then, when you have a good emotional foundation with somebody, then maybe you're more willing to learn. My son, on the other hand, if it was March 2020, he was 2.5. He was definitely more affected. So my daughter, when she went back to school, she didn't wear a mask. She very sensitive to things on her face,
Okay.
and she didn't wear a mask. So she was always just comfortable. My son goes back to school. He's 2.5, almost 3, and he's so good at wearing his mask. So he wore a mask. And no, and the kids weren't talking to each other. Like they were playing cooperatively as much as a 3-year-old can, but they didn't have that exposure to what facial expressions, and adults at the time hadn't learned yet that they had to express themselves through their eyes. They had to
Yeah.
express itself through their eyes, right? Because so many people are just like, whatever. They're not expressive. And so without
Yeah.
that facial expressions, it was hard. So was she set back for COVID? I think if she hadn't had an abusive teacher, I think everything would have been fine. She was definitely more set back by the abuse
Okay.
than the lockdown.
No, yeah, it's just interesting to see how I think like the future generation of kids will like react. Yeah, I think like I want to say most people that went through COVID like through the, I guess like the lonely year, year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
That I think most of us are okay, but I think there's some of us that had really affected us like emotionally, mentally. It was a hard time, and especially for kids like they're growing up. Like imagine spending 2 years in like high school or even college,
Oh,
high school, or even middle school, and you're just stuck at home,
yeah.
like forcefully, it can really affect you. And I think it can also like provide trauma of like when you're growing older, we get to think about like I kind of wasted 2 years because I couldn't do anything. Like it's not really your fault, which makes it a little easier, but still, it like 2 years, so something you couldn't do
Two
because
years. Yeah.
yeah, like everyone always wants like, oh, I wish I could go back when I was younger and like not feel pain and not worry about getting sick and I can
Mm-hmm.
sleep in late. But like some people had like forced to stay home, and yeah, it affected them a
Yeah.
lot, and I feel for them.
Yeah. I mean, and the tough thing too with Hope, my daughter, is that she's getting better now, but she can't verbalize always what she wants and how she feels. So
Hmm.
during COVID, during that summer, I'd put the babies in the stroller and we would take these hour-long walks. We were very healthy. We were out breathing the fresh air. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
But our neighbors had opened up, with socializing before we were ready to. They had slightly older kids, like elementary, early middle school. So as far as like you were just talking about, like that social emotional, like those kids needed that.
Yeah.
They're, healthy bodies, could fight off infection as far as anyone knows. Like, so they really needed to support like the mental health part. So they were
Hmm.
open. So we'd come home from the walk and I would just sort of like sit on the step and we'd see them all playing. And she, again, so little, 4 years old. And she'd start reaching of where they are and pointing and I'm like,
Oh.
oh, I think you want that. Like, and so it was very like, once we're out of sight, out of mind, we're good. Like, go for your walk, play in the backyard, go into the house. So there was a lot of games that, as parents, we had to play to say, like, no, 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 you don't want that, and that's
Mm.
unnatural. Like, of course she wanted that, but like, no, you don't want that. That's yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. You don't want fun. Forget fun. Hang out with mom.
No, that's really good. Yeah, I think it's also tricky when you're dealing with. I'm assuming that you don't really have a handbook to follow with Hope. It seems like you're kind of learning as you go because yes, she has Down syndrome, but like yes, it's Down syndrome, but it's so widely. It's such a huge spectrum that it's almost like it like helps, but like almost doesn't though because like it's like so are you just like learning as you go along life of like what her like differences are because I feel like you can't study her because no one's really like her.
Yeah, no one's like her. No one's like her. No one's like Henry. No one's like you. Wouldn't it be easier if someone had lived a life and you could just do what they did or don't do what they did? So, with Hope, so when she was born, we were connected to a really wonderful network in our area there were one, two, three, four. There were four babies under the age of 1 who had Down syndrome, and we all live like very close to each other. So we were the
Okay.
fifth baby in this group, and the kids still play, the moms still talk. My phone has like a million missed messages because we have a chain going. And At first, it was hard to see that there was such a difference because having not been exposed to Down syndrome or disability at all, but like Down syndrome particularly, I guess I just sort of thought they were all going to develop the same. I thought all kids develop the same. Forget Down syndrome, like just typical kids. Like you get your
Yeah.
checklist, like between this month and this month they do X, and between this month and this month they do this. For Down syndrome, it's a little different. So instead of it being within certain ranges, age ranges, instead it's sort of like almost like a flow, like a across time that it's always forward moving. They are
Mm-hmm.
going to crawl before they walk. They are going to, learn to talk at a certain point, anywhere from like ages 3 to 16. But it's always forward moving. So I learned very early on to shift my expectations of what she could do from specific milestones to instead forward progress. Our neonatologist told us never compare Hope to anyone but herself.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just don't compare Hope to a typical kid. It was don't even compare Hope to another kid with Down syndrome. And it's very different. So our friends, those ones who I was talking about when the kids were babies, one is the wittiest, funniest kid. You can understand everything he says. He rides a two-wheel bike. He's 8. What other amazing, he's just witty. Like he has like this amazing sense of humor and an incredible vocabulary, and he blows my mind. And then, some of our other kids we have one who has been very medically challenged. He had surgery when he was 2 days old. He had a bone marrow transplant after having leukemia. He has a feeding tube. His needs are very different too. Like, so as far as that being a spectrum, yeah, no, we're past the point of ever thinking there's ever going to be anyone like you. Well, we understand that as parents and within the community, and you understand it. I don't know why, but you do. Thank you. You find, teachers who haven't been exposed or other parents who haven't been exposed, except to that super incredible, like 1 in a million kid who like makes it, you know, in a show, in a movie. They're an actor, they're a model, they're an artist. Like they have this like fantastic talent that showcases to the world, and then people who aren't exposed have that expectation. Oh, you have Down syndrome, are you an artist? Like, oh, you're a Down syndrome, are you a model? Like, no, no, actually she has Down syndrome and she really, really, really likes Cocomelon. YouTube is like fantastic, and she has a stuffed dog. Like, no, we're not. We're just regular people, and we're somewhere like down the middle of a line. So yeah, no, it's a piece you come to, and then it's hard. And I imagine maybe you've experienced this too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you gain such a strong understanding of your own world that you forget that other people have no idea. They don't know what it's like day to day. They don't know the terminology, the lingo. They don't know that a kid with Down syndrome can be different from another kid with Down syndrome. They're not all the same, and they're not always happy. I I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, I'll offer a different perspective actually. So like I know that you're very inclusive with like meeting other disabled people, but I do know a lot of disabled people who are actually just not will eliminate themselves from the disability community. Like it was like I was one of those people that
Okay.
from like so I was part of like a special class from like first and second grade, and I was like fine so I could mingle with regular kids till like to my the rest of my life basically. And then during the summers, I would go to like these special camps with disability kids and all that. And but like I never felt I fit in the group. Like
Okay.
physically, it was great because they had to understand me and I can't really get hurt and stuff. So that's great in itself. But the other thing, I'm also a very smart person, and it wasn't benefiting me that much because I would deal with people that couldn't talk
Yep.
well, or people that just can't. The people that you would never really see on the street, like they can't like hold a job or they have a lot of difficulty, and I totally get their their needs and such. But like for me, it doesn't help me because I like strive more for the stars and such. And the other thing with the disability community is that a lot of us are we're I'm trying to think of the word. I feel like we're too soft on them sometimes, and like you don't really have to do
Soft on
anything
who?
on us, on
Okay. Each
disabled
other?
people. No, like like parents and like teachers, like they don't
Okay.
like their job is to be inclusive and like teach us. But like if you want to be like a real adult, like you have to like put yourself out there and like struggle with it. But like we're so protected that sometimes the real world hurts, so like we coil back in. So like someone like me, I'm putting myself out there, like on the YouTube and getting rejected and like getting guests for my podcast. You know, that takes a lot of rejection and stuff. And most people don't want to do that. If you want to go get a job, you get rejected a lot and such, and like it hurts. Like you don't want that. You want to be in a comfortable environment. You want everyone to like help you out and such. But like when you're a real adult, people don't really help you anymore, and that's hard for a lot of people. You know, like people kind of slowly go from a like middle school to high school, and then maybe get a job or two, experience some rejection. You know, start dating a little bit, get rejected, and then like hate that sex for like 4 years until you recover from your trauma.
Yeah.
But you learn it over time
Yeah.
and such. You know, college, like you going, like you live, usually like you live away for the first time, even though the parents probably pay for you. So like you're like living away, but you're really not away. But
Yeah,
like
you're not.
you're learning like responsibility and stuff. Like your actions have consequences. There's sometimes, but in the disability community, you don't really get that. And if you get like one little hurt, you don't want to experience that, so you want to stay back. But then it creates a problem where like you stay back and everyone goes to like the adult world and like get jobs and relationships, but you're staying back. But like yes, it's they're protecting you, but it also comes down to the person. They don't want to put themselves out there because they never really had to try hard to do anything. Everything was just given to them, all like the teacher would look out for them as such, but like after a while, as a disabled person, you have to look out for yourself. And I see that so many times. And like, I mean, it's not even a disability community. Sometimes it's just regular people too. Like, after a while, you gotta put effort into yourself to make it work. Like, you don't have a job, you gotta go and apply for like 100 jobs. Yes, I do understand as a disabled person, it is much harder to get a job and all of that, but like, it it comes with the territory that you do have to try harder with a disabled person. And at the end of the day, like no one really cares how many times you fail. It's as long as you get the job or whatever, and like it goes that. And I suppose really hard. It's like so. It's kind of like if it comes down to you, and you gotta like have the motivation to do it. And it's also hard as a parent. Like you don't wanna, you understand their difficulty, but you also don't want to push them out. Be like, go and get a job, and you gotta do something with your life. You can't just sit around like you become like this immature person, and it's kind of like it's hard to like talk to them like as an adult. Like you gotta like do something. Like because once after 18, when school ends, that kind of is like that's adulthood. Like you don't really have friends anymore. Their friends are the people that are you're in class with, but that's geographical convenience. Like how many friends do you have outside that you talk to during the summer if they're doing work and stuff? You kind of really don't have any. It's kind of like a convenience, or like if you're valuable in some aspect, like if you're a smart person, you have connections and such, or such. But like at the end of the day, most of us don't really have friends either and such, and they're just busy with their lives, their family, and they're just so busy. But some disabled people don't realize that because they're not working and stuff. They don't realize the stress behind it, and it's hard for an adult to explain to you like all the responsibility because it doesn't seem that much when you like talk to them. But like if you're actually in that state, it's actually a lot of work. And like at the end of the day, you're tired. Like you don't have time to mingle with new friends and stuff. Like you'll be lucky if you meet up with your friend for like once a month or like even once a year. Like people are just busy and tired and want to be alone. And it's really complicated. And it's like always, I'm all like the disability community is very great being inclusive, and it's totally great. But I feel like you have to separate yourself if you really want to become something because you have to be stuck to that level, and you almost got to think you're better than other disabled people. As crappy as that sounds, because if you don't, you're just always gonna be stay behind, and I don't want to stay behind. I want to do big things. Like if I'm just like I don't want to live in a shadow. I want to be like my own person. But I think a lot of people just need that motivation, and like you that's not adulthood. Like you have bills to pay at the end of the month. Like if you don't pay your bill, like you're gonna get kicked out of your house. Like that's the real deal.
It's a real deal.
And like people just don't understand that. They live with their parents and such, and I don't think they get that. And that so always like root for like yeah, you should have disabled people, but it shouldn't be your only world. You should hang out with other people that are better than you, so like that have jobs and relationships, so you can learn more from them because they're more likely to teach you more than a disabled person that will not. With that being said, there are a good amount of disabled people that are doing good. They have relationships and family and such too. Those are the people you should hang out with. But I think a lot of us don't have that, and it's difficult to say because I've been following a lot. And then also in the disability community, there's a lot of toxicity to it. Like,
Okay.
so I'm sure you see like people advocating or like I put in quotes advocating, but they're just like complaining a lot and such. And like, yes, you have a disability, but doesn't mean it has to be your whole life. Like you're still an adult and you still have feelings and interests. Like, don't make your disability your whole life. Because I think it hurts you more than it helps you. Like, go get therapy. Like, it comes with the territory. Being disabled sucks. Like, it's always gonna suck. People are gonna look at you weird all the time. People are gonna do ableist. They're gonna think ableist of you. That's just comes with the territory. Like, you gotta, you gotta deal with it, or you're just gonna have a bad time. And I think no one really gives that strong pep talk. So I'm trying to fill that void to do the pep talk, especially like with men, because it's such a you see a lot of women advocates, like especially in disability, but it's a lot different for men, and men are not. They're just not men, so I'm just trying to fill that void, and but I also want to explore other opportunities too. I just want to be I want to be more human than disability, but it's also a little hard because when you're on social media, your disability posts get more likes and comments and such, versus like if I just post about something else, like I don't know, like me going in the pool, like, it won't be as big of a
No
deal.
one cares.
Yeah,
No one
so
needs
it's
to see Joe in the pool.
exactly. So like I understand that, like, are you catering to the audience or are you
Yeah.
catering to yourself? And I feel like sometimes they go the toxic way of it. Then
Okay.
like like another thing to add, I think a lot of disability people are hypocrites just because. So if you ask most disabled people, like, what do you think of disabled porn and like inspirational porn, and everyone would say like they hate it, but as soon as you go on their social media, they're like, oh, I was disabled and I couldn't do this, and it's like you just
Interesting.
said you don't like inspirational porn, but like you're feeding that,
Have you
and
ever faced off with someone on that?
kind of do it. I'm gonna make a video about it, but like it doesn't make sense. So like that's why like on my social media, it's not very. Yes, I'm disabled, but I don't go every single post like, oh, I have this rare disease and like my life's a struggle.
Mhm.
Like, no, I just have other interests and such, and hopefully my audience will like it. I do see that more people like my wheelchair photo over me getting nominated for the runway show, which is so
Which
strange.
is incredible.
I know, but
So
it's so
cool.
strange, like how the audience reacts to such. Like,
Yeah.
well, like, I mean, for me, I'm having fun with it. Like, some people kind of go too much into social media. Like, they got posts every day, and like I think that is toxic and stuff. Like, it's great that you have like a schedule, but like you're not really helping them. Like, you gotta do more. Like, you're like what's great about you that you're not only complaining about like school districts and all that, but you're actually like going and making change. Most disabled people will not do anything. They'll just complain and complain and complain and
Mhm.
not do anything. And it's really annoying. Like, go and do something. Like, like if some regular person parks in a handicap spot, they'll make a whole video about it, complain about it, and then I even comment like, did you confront the person? Did you help make the change? And they're
Yeah.
like, no. And I'm like, so you didn't do anything. They're not gonna watch the video. Your audience are more disabled focused, so they're not gonna be shitty people to them. So like, you're not really helping anything. You gotta do something. Like,
Yeah.
that's the only like the people like that's why we have like curbs in New York City. Someone fought for that. Like, why we have Braille. Someone fought for it. We didn't just complain on social media. And like, yeah, I think I
You
see
think
how
there'd
like
be like a lot more progress if everyone would just
yeah, like if
band up
everyone
together?
like the real advocates are the one that go to Congress and change it. People like you like know about the laws. Like, how do you help that? That's the only way you can make change. Me posting on social media is not gonna help. Me doing this podcast is really not gonna help that much.
No,
Yes,
we're gonna
it
help so many people. Stop. We're helping.
yeah, like I'm gonna get views, I get fuel my vanity, and may make me feel really good for like a week. But
Mhm.
like it's really not doing much. Like I have other plans I want to do. that will help the disability community in the
Cool.
future. But like making videos really won't. I think of myself like as an entertainer. It's entertaining, really. Will it really help you? No. Like you can follow everything. Like it's not gonna help. Like realistically, it's not gonna help. You're either doing it for the likes and vanity, and yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
That's my end rant. Like yeah,
it's true. No, I mean, and as far as like the parenting thing, like I use the word exploitation. So
yeah,
I see so many parents, especially who have kids with Down syndrome, who there's a fine line between like the way I was talking about the difference between separation and segregation. There's a fine line between educating people and exploiting your child. And, I mean, when my kids are cute, I need you to see them eat a banana because they're so cute when they eat a banana. You better think that they're cute. So like there is like the parent brag portion of it that's like
I get it.
unfortunate
Yeah.
and very social media. But then there's like these, like, I'm sorry, but a baby with Down syndrome is like a baby. Like you haven't even gotten into the thick of it yet. We have like a unique experience having done abuse in school and civil rights and all that.
Yeah.
In general, like she's also 7. Like I can pick her up and put her on my hip. Like she's tiny. She
Yeah.
wears, she's in a car seat. She doesn't call her friends on the phone. She doesn't have a cell phone. She's not looking for a
Um.
job. Like we haven't done like these big, really hard life things yet. Like we're still very
Yeah.
young. And so I'm more hesitant as the years go on to say, "Ooh, look how good we're doing," because like we really haven't done anything yet. Like we've done some medical stuff, we've done some therapies, we've learned some
Hmm.
things. She's happy, blah blah blah. But like she's a little kid, and then I see these moms who like get on and they're like, "Oh my gosh, my 6-month-old is like as perfect as your 6-month-old." Like, yeah, no, we know. Like, shut up, like, or when they're just like, "Look, like I'm playing with my child." Like, "Oh, just make sure my hair, oh, don't I look cute in the video? I mean, I'm playing with my child." Like, God damn, like that is so like fake, like, yes, I believe that you love your child, but checking yourself in the camera while you're playing with your child after setting up your camera to make sure that like, what? Like, so like there's a lot of exploitation too, or like trying to like advance their image
Hmm.
by using their kid, because without your kid who has a disability, you're pretty freaking boring, and like no one
Yeah.
cares about you. And now all of a sudden you have someone to carry your image, somewhere else. And I don't think a lot of people even know that they're doing it, and like that's the part that really had to try to forgive and just look away from, is like you might not know. Like I don't know how you teach that. Like you really think you're helping someone right now because you've got, 10,000
Advocacy.
followers. Helping. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm just
I
checking
don't
my
know.
dog.
I don't know. We're gonna meet one of those parents actually as a runaway. I don't. I'm trying to think. I don't. Yeah. I don't know if there are any parents with high followings that have rare disease children that we'll see though. I don't think so. I think we're actually everyone seems to be pretty normal in that
You know
regard.
what? There was, I forget what his handle is, but he's that little boy with the limb difference who fist bumped the soccer player. All these names are escaping
Yeah, I
me.
know what you're talking about. Yeah.
He's coming, so he's walking. He's Henry's
Oh, he
age.
is? Okay.
Yeah, so I think they have a lot of followers. And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
but
sure who else. I think
yeah,
everyone's
I
just
don't think any,
regular.
yeah, I don't think anyone has crazy parents though that are exploiting their kids kind of.
Oh, in that sense.
I
Oh, I
don't
see
think
what you're
so.
saying. I see what you're
Yeah,
saying. No, I don't think so either. I don't
no.
think so.
I mean, there is, yeah, I'm trying to think. Um, no, everyone seems to be, no, I know one that posts it really often and she upsets me a lot of things.
Oh no.
I mean, like some people like she has like 15,000 followers, which is a lot, and that's amazing. But like, I feel like she's posting like she's like the godmother of the disability community and such,
Mm,
and like it's getting too much for me. Like she posts it about everything.
okay. Doesn't sound familiar. Okay.
Yeah, she's definitely really like supportive, which is great. But I feel like she's almost too supportive of things. Like I have some
Mm.
negative feedback for her, like no, but like she posted everything, like she's building a house. Like I'm gonna edit this all out, so
It's
I
okay.
don't.
It's okay.
Yeah, but like her husband seems to be building a house that will like fit her and her like wheelchair, which is great. But like she's posting like updates like every 3 days about it and like how great it is and like here's me doing a walkthrough and all that. And
Right.
I'm like, you can like relax a little. But like she posts like
Oh,
every two
maybe I
days
have seen that.
and like 15 different stories. And I'm just like, oh my God, like it's just too much of like.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand, but it's also weird because there'll be some people that I think are really annoying, but they get like 10, 50,000 likes. And I'm like, oh my God, like, finished up with you. So any last words before we head out?
No, just love my babies. Leave my babies alone. No, I think Runaway of Dreams is going to be fantastic next week. I hope that, everyone is excited about it, that they embrace it. We need more adaptive clothing because my 5-year-old needs to get dressed.
Mm,
Um, and no, I just, let us in the door. Now don't make Joe an equal, but um, um, care more. I don't know. No, I'm not saying any of the right things right now. No, there's nothing I need to sign off on. Thank you so much for listening, for tolerating me. Nobody. I'm just a, busybody parent who wants to fix the world. If the world lasts long enough to fix.
okay, that's great words. Thank you so much for giving me your time at XPC. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, and I'll see everyone next time. Peace.
Thanks, Joe.